All right, for those of you who are looking at your sketches and having trouble trying to figure out how to make your sketch come to life, and maybe your sketch is already so refined or maybe very custom and hand lettered that you may not have a typeface that will match. So in class today I saw this example, and so I thought I'd show you how you could take a sketch and then bring it to something usable on the computer. So what we would be doing is you need to take your sketch to a scanner, and there are scanners in the 205 lab, which is just off of where the 206 labs are. It's off to the side there a little bit. And if you have any questions, you can ask at the help desk to get there. If you've never used the scanners, ask your TA or your lab IA and or the people at the help desk, and they can help set you up. So what you're going to do is you're just going to scan in your sketch. I should say that I actually use this. There are lots of apps that you can get for your phone. I use Scanner Pro, and I think it costs maybe $1.99 or $2, but I use it for everything, and it really does a great job taking scans anywhere you are, which is great for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take this, and I brought it into Photoshop. So when you scan it, you probably get a JPEG, and you can bring it into Photoshop. And what I like to do is get rid of anything I don't want as part of the sketch first. So to do that, I'm going to actually just go and use the eraser tool in Photoshop. If you've never opened Photoshop, that's okay. And so I'm going to find the eraser tool, and I'm just going to come on and erase all the parts of my sketch that I don't want included in the final. So you can change your brush size up at the top, so if your brush is looking too big or too small, you can go up and change that. And obviously that's not part of it. So if there's anything on there that you just want to get rid of, you can go ahead and do that. Sometimes you get little pieces of dust or whatever from the scanner. Okay, so I'm just going to solidify my final design. Then before I actually bring this anywhere else, I like to apply what's called an adjustment layer. And there's this one that's called threshold. So if you go over, if this isn't showing up on your computer, your adjustments, if you go up to Window and find your adjustments, it should show up. But if I click threshold, this window pops up. And what it does is it pulls everything to be a pure black or pure white. And if you pull this little lever to the left or right, you can either get more detail, which as you can see is now what I want. It picks up things that I don't want. Or if I pull to the left, it has less detail. So you kind of have to find the happy medium based off of your sketch. And obviously there's some imperfections here, but that's kind of the beauty of it, if that's what you're going for, is this hand-lettered feel. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm going to save this. So I'm going to go in and File, Save As, and I'm just going to go to my desktop. And I'm going to call it Scan. All right. And I'm going to do it as a Photoshop file, and that's fine. You could also do it as a JPEG. Either way, doesn't really matter. Whatever your original format is probably fine as long as you can bring it into another program. I'll do JPEG, keep it universal. And for my JPEG options, I'll keep it as high as I have, which is 12. Okay, now I'm going to actually go into Illustrator. So this may be the first time that you're using Illustrator, and that's okay. I'll walk you through the steps. So first I'm going to go in and I'm just going to open my JPEG. And when you do that, it has the image already there for you. So I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to find this thing called Image Trace. And so what I want to do is I want this window to pop up, which gives me all of these options here. And when I work in Photoshop, my image is limited to the quality of my scan. So if I scan that at a poor quality, I won't be able to actually take that and put it on my resume because it will look pixelated and it won't look crisp and clean, and you won't be able to make it bigger or smaller, and it's not as useful for you when it's in an image format like a JPEG. It's called a raster image. If you come into Illustrator, Illustrator is a different type of program where instead of this being one solid image where I can just click and move the entire image and I cannot go in and customize any of this text. What this program does is it breaks it down into those anchor points that we're looking for. So I want this to become an editable vector, which is made up of all these anchor points that I can then go in and use my tools to kind of customize and clean up. And so there's this really fun feature in Illustrator that works really well, especially when you have something simple like black on white background. And it's called image trace. Some things you need to look for here. One, I always open up the advanced. It might look like this, but if you toggle open the advanced options, I want to choose ignore white, because ignore white will actually get rid of this background, and I want that to not be part of it. I'm going to click preview, and it's just telling me that it's a large image. It might take me a little bit. And you see that automatically that white background has gone away. There's still a white on the document that I'm working on in Illustrator, but right now I don't have that white background anymore, which was on the white sheet of paper when I drew. So now the only thing I really have to go in and do is, if it's not black and white, you want to just make it black and white. And then this is the threshold thing we were talking about before. You can increase or decrease that to have more detail or less detail, and playing around with your paths. So as you do that, it might take a little bit to customize or update. But then you'll kind of give a preview of what it's going to look like. So maybe you want less corners, maybe you want a smoother look. You could customize that accordingly. All right. Once you're happy with it, then you can be done with that. But the last step, which is the most important, is you have to come up and hit this little button that says expand. And as soon as I do that, I no longer need this window. As soon as I do that, if you come in and click on this, you'll see now we have these anchor points that I can go in and start editing. Now there's a lot of anchor points. So this is obviously it's a much more complicated drawing versus maybe a typeface that would be created for you. But what's really nice about this is that now it doesn't matter what size I make this, it will still be nice and crisp, and it'll be that nice black edge versus having pixelation like we would have had it originally. So the last thing I would say is, before I want to put this, copy this and then bring that to my InDesign document, is that I can actually go in and smooth some of these lines. So if I have the images, the anchor points selected, I can go and click and hold. It might look like the shaper tool, but if you click and hold, or the pencil tool, but there's this really cool tool under here called the smooth tool. And you don't have to be very particular with how you use it, but once you have your anchor points selected, if you kind of click and drag around them, it smooths out some of those lines. And you'll see that what it's really doing is removing the amount of anchor points. And so sometimes it goes a little crazy and it does too many. And so if you look at it and you're like, no, that's not what I want, then you're going to have to go to Edit, Undo. And you might have to do it a couple of times to get back. But what it does is it takes something that's a little bit like rougher of an edge, and it smooths it by just eliminating the number of anchor points. So you might be able to go in and customize it. And you'll see that it does it by path. So for instance, here I'd have to go back in and apply that. And really wherever you kind of click and drag, it just takes that area and eliminates how many anchor points there are. And so then you can go in and customize. If it's too much and you don't like it, you can then go in and really fine-tune this by playing with your little anchor point, by moving them or adjusting these little handlebars, which will then in turn adjust the shape of your the smoothness of each of your shapes. So the last step after this would be like File. You can save this. You can actually save this as an Illustrator file, and you can place that right into your InDesign document for your resume. All right, hope that helps.